YouTube? So this is going to be part 2 of the OBS coil near plug and ECU swap. I guess it'd be called like a mini series. My dad actually took some videos of himself kind of explaining exactly what he's doing with what parts he's using, what trucks he was able to get parts off of that'll actually work. Hey, before I enter your segment, remember that one time I was welding up my intercooler piping and you said it looked like hammered dog poo? Look who's talking.
Did I admit that to you yesterday?
Yes.
Mine looked like earthworms laying on the pipe.
That's okay. It'll still seal up. It's inside the pipe there.
Yeah.
At least it's got V-bands on it.
Yeah.
What's up, YouTube? I'm not Noah, I'm Noah's dad. And I'm hijacking his channel for a minute because I'm doing a build that he wanted to do some coverage on, but he's been busy between work, his girlfriend, and they just bought a house together. So he's been doing a lot of work there. So we haven't exactly coordinated on our times that we're working on stuff, and it's hard for him to cover it. So I'm gonna go over this a little bit. As you have seen in some of his videos, behind us here is my OBS Chevy. It's a 99 K3500, which means it's a 1-ton 4-wheel drive Chevy. So in this truck, powering this truck, I should say, is a 454, a Vortec 454 as they call it. And it's capable of a lot more power than what GM built into it. The tune is very conservative. The cam is just kind of lame, and we're gonna do something about that. So a couple of the modifications that I decided on here with some help from a lot of, I don't know, forum reading and some research on camshafts is I decided to go with a cam swap and ignition upgrade, which we'll go over, which is fairly significant. Headers, full exhaust, and a little bit of a change on the fuel system as well. So as far as the camshaft, I'm a little ahead right now in this, in taking the video. I've already swapped the cam, and I have had the oil pan off for that, the front timing cover off. It's really hard to get all that sealed back up if it's not back off. To pull just the timing cover off it would have torn the oil pan gasket and made a mess out of things, and I probably wouldn't have got it sealed back up. So oil pan was off, timing cover was off. Kind of nice to see that the oil pan was nice and clean inside. This truck has, I believe, 72,000 miles on it, and it was obviously taken care of. There was no sludge or bearing material or anything fun like that in the pan, so that's encouraging. So cam is swapped out. I used a GM Performance Parts HO454/502 camshaft. It's a pretty mild camshaft in relation to, like your typical performance cam. This is not a performance truck. I use this truck for towing. I drive with it. My intent is more torque and horsepower towing, and in the RPM range where I'm towing at the speed that I'm at, which is typically around 23 to 2,500 RPM. When I'm going 70 to 80 miles an hour. So that was the range I was looking at. I referenced Richard Holdner. I had asked him in one of his live streams what he would suggest for this engine in this truck and that application, and he said keep the intake duration at low to mid teens. So that was what I selected in this GM Performance Parts cam. I did not go with a Comp or a Lunati or a Crane. The cam probably wouldn't have made a big difference, but the reason that I went ahead and went with the GM Performance Parts cam was I was going to use factory GM lifters anyway. I did replace the lifters, and I didn't want to use something from an aftermarket. I have heard that they're just not, they're not good. They're not of good quality anymore. I don't know if this is a COVID thing. I don't know if this is a Chinese manufacturing of parts thing. but I didn't want to take the chance of having a failed lifter, so I just bought new GM lifters. These have been in here since 1999. They've lasted well, but since I've got the engine apart, I may as well replace them. So GM part numbers, all new lifters. I did convert the valve train to an adjustable valve train with comp cams, new rocker studs for the heads. I did have the heads cleaned, magnafluxed, valve job done, surfaced the heads, and the machine shop, while they were in there, replaced the valve springs as well with also GM Performance Parts springs that are matched for this cam. So they're freshened up, and that's going to be good enough. A set of aluminum heads would have been neat, but $2,500 wasn't in the budget right now, so we didn't do that. So cam has been swapped. Lifters are in, valve train is all back together. One of the things that I'm going to flip around and show right now is the valve covers. So these valve covers have the ignition coils on them. Now, this is not your normal Vortec engine setup. None of these engines came with the coil near plug ignition setup. All these engines came with your typical distributor and distributor cap, you know, old school design basically. And these Vortec distributors are just kind of known to be problematic. And in this big block with the upper intake, it is an absolute bear to get to the distributor. It sucks. So setting the timing on these is kind of a chore. You don't just whip out your timing light like the old days and, you know, set the timing. It's got to be done basically through a tuning or a diagnostic app. There's a procedure that's got to happen. And I don't know, I wanted to do something different. So I decided to do this coil near plug ignition swap. And these valve covers are actually valve covers off of an L21 series of this 454 engine, which is just GM's engine code, their manufacturing code. The one in this truck would have been an L29. The one that had the coil near plug ignition is an L21. That is a medium duty truck engine, you know, like a Kodiak or a Top Kick C4500 through 6500 or whatever. When they came with a big block in the years, I believe it was 97 through 2001, they had a coil near plug ignition. So these valve covers off of one of those engines. These ignition coils are actually just LS1 ignition coils. I have spark plug wires that I just bought, some 8.5 millimeter MSD superconductors that I will shorten up and crimp the ends back on for my new plug wires. And the ignition system itself will function based off of the PCM that I'm swapping in, which is another thing. So again, this PCM, lovingly known as the black box PCM, that was their earlier, GM's earlier version of the, you know, their port fuel injection PCM for these trucks. It was from 96 through 2000 in these OBS trucks. And then for the newer trucks, they obviously switched over to the LS version, which is known as just simply an 0411, which is the last 4 digits of GM's part number for that PCM. It's a very common PCM used in the earlier LS1s, the earlier trucks. Pretty easy to come by, and a more refined unit, I guess you'd say. The operating system is just, the tables are more refined. I believe there's more that can be tuned in them. These black box PCMs can be tuned, but they're pretty limited in their abilities. And the 0411 PCM is cheap and easy to come by, and the swap is not really that hard. The connectors have to be repinned. There's 4 connectors in this black box, and there's 2 connectors in the LS PCM. So I will have to remove the pins from the black box connectors and insert them into the LS connectors after I got all the pins out of the LS connectors, all the terminals, I should say, not pins. So during that process, I will also be adding the wiring for the coil near plug ignition. There is a gentleman who has done all of this I don't know, homework, I guess you'd say, already. He's got a forum handle of Lex Tech, and I was able to reach out to him through a GMT 400 forum and ask him kindly for the pinouts for the change out for the 411 swap and for the coil near plug ignition. And I think it was, I don't know, $100 or something he asked for these spreadsheets. And while I probably could have made the spreadsheets myself by finding a Kodiak or Topkick manual, and I've got the GM service manuals for this truck, it would have taken me hours to do that and put it all together. And honestly, it was worth the $100 for the research this gentleman has done already. So props to him for doing that and for sharing it. He's been doing it for years. He's been sharing this information for years. So that will make this a lot easier and less stressful for me. So once I get all that ironed out, then I have to download an operating system, an LS-based operating system, which also requires the use of a different reluctor wheel on the crankshaft. So this engine in the Vortec series trucks uses a 1X cam signal, which comes from the distributor, and a 4X crank signal, which comes from the reluctor on the front of the crankshaft. So this operating system that I will be using will go to a 24X, which is your typical Gen 3 LS engine operating system, the crank trigger signal. So while I had the timing cover off, I did change the timing set. I know there's not many miles on it, but I'm in there, I may as well change it. In order to get the crank gear off, the reluctor wheel has to come off first. That reluctor wheel, being a 4X, has 4 teeth on it. So this was the reluctor wheel, this is the 4X reluctor wheel. This got pulled off, and EFI Connection is a company that makes the 24X reluctor to do this conversion. So I bought the 24X reluctor from them. That went right in place of where the 4X was, put the timing cover back on, and I swapped out the crank sensor as well. I don't recall the part number that was used. It was suggested by EFI Connection as the one that's got to be used. So when all this comes together, hopefully I stir in a key and it'll actually fire up, hopefully. I've got a tune that someone is going to send me that should load into the LS1 PCM, and it should work. I guarantee I'll have to make some tweaks and some changes because of my cam change. But that's just kind of to be seen. I'm not a tuner, but nobody was born tuning vehicles. Everyone has learned how to do it. So I'm gonna give it a crack. And if I suck at it, then I'll bring it somewhere and have them tune it. But I'm willing to give it a try, buy HP tuners and see how it goes. Another couple things that I've done, the original fuel injectors in these trucks, particularly in the big block trucks, they're a fuel injector made by Rochester. Rochester made all the quadrajet carburetors back in the day, and probably the TBI throttle body injection hardware as well for the early 90s trucks. But they made the fuel injectors for these trucks, and they're known for leaking. They suck. They're junk when they're fairly new still. So I put a set of Bosch injectors in here, and I also eliminated another problem issue with these trucks. As I mentioned, the distributor is a beast to get to in these, and the fuel pressure regulator is even worse. Fuel pressure regulator is located basically behind the engine, behind the intake manifold, damn near in the trans tunnel, and they fail frequently. When I did the injectors last summer, I also replaced the fuel pressure regulator because I didn't want to have to do it again. So it had been working fine, but I figured while I have all this stuff apart, I'm gonna make some changes. So I decided to install a Corvette style fuel filter on here, which has an internal regulator. Now this is an LS1 Corvette style regulator, or fuel filter. Internal regulator, so this is basically a returnless system now. The fuel comes out of the tank, the pump obviously pumps it out of the tank to the fuel filter, and then that's where the return starts. It returns right back to the tank from the fuel filter. So I removed the fuel pressure regulator, the factory one, which I kept around just for the heck of it. I don't know why. Cut it off. fuel rail and crimped the fuel line closed on the rail and just fusion welded it shut with a TIG torch. And I did fire up the fuel pump to make sure that it doesn't leak. Have everything installed and hooked up right now. And well, it didn't leak. So that's good news. So what does that mean? It means the fuel pressure is no longer at 42 PSI with the factory regulator. It's now at 58 PSI. So that's going to effectively change my injector flow rates. So I'll have to deal with that in the tuning and make all that happen. So another thing that I'll have to learn, but no big deal. I'll get some pictures or video of that setup under the truck when I'm down there doing the exhaust, which brings me to the next thing, the exhaust. So the factory, manifolds, exhaust, and all that, obviously we're not built for any sort of performance. They were just built for longevity and mainly for emissions regulations. And, that's one of the things that gearheads do is typically you change the exhaust, get a little more power out of it. So I put a set of headers on it, a set of Hedman headers. Nobody that I could find made full-length headers for these trucks. I assume it's because of the EGR, which is piped from the exhaust manifold into the intake manifold. Well, I'm eliminating the EGR, so I decided to go with a set of headers that are for a 95 and later, or earlier rather, GMT 400 chassis truck with a 454, and they fit. I coated them. We'll see if what I put on there lasts. It's not what I wanted to use, but we'll see if it holds up and maybe talk about it if it does. Headers are on there and they fit, which is pretty cool. There's no interference with anything. It's always, kind of a question as to whether it's going to be too close to some wiring or hoses or what it may be, but they're on there and they look okay. So I'll have to run the full exhaust now. I'm not using a kit or anything. I'm not bringing it to an exhaust shop. I'm going to build the system myself. I've got a 3-inch X pipe and I'm going to run back to the X pipe, and then I've got a couple 2.5-inch Flowmaster big block series mufflers. They give a kind of a mellow, deep tone, and I'm not into the really loud stuff anymore. I'm 48 years old, so I'm past that. I did that when I was young, and that's not me anymore. So full tailpipes, not sure how I'm going to configure that yet, but we'll cover that when it happens. So I think that pretty much covers what's happening here. The ignition swap, the cam swap, full exhaust, the tune, the 0411 PCM, and we'll see how all this goes. I don't spend a lot of time out here. It's pretty much just my my Saturdays and maybe a weekday after work for a couple hours, but it takes me a little while to do this stuff. And it's been really cool watching Noah learn and progress, and starting with dirt bikes and now into trucks. He's really done some awesome things. So if you're a dad, you've got a young son or a daughter, or whatever it may be, work with them, have patience with them, and if they want to help you out, even if they screw stuff up and break some bolts off, which Noah has done, working with me, don't get mad. Anything's repairable, and the value you're going to get from working with your son or daughter is just awesome. I love this kid, and I'm so proud of everything that he's done, and I look forward to everything he's going to do in the future. He's not done. He's building stuff, and he's going to continue building stuff. So I will cover more of this stuff in the future on my truck, or he will, one or the other. One of us will, and we'll get it wrapped up, and I don't know. Excited to see what happens next. So we'll see you.
So that's going to conclude this video for now. As you can see, we are at the stages of doing the exhaust. Once the truck is ready to fire up, or once we start doing some of the wiring and stuff like that, I'll throw some more videos in here for part 3. So definitely stay tuned. This truck will be done through and through. We'll go over all the specifics and all that if you're looking to do this to your truck. So stay tuned for the next video. There will be a part 3, but until then, I'll catch you guys in the next one.